Hey everybody, it's me, Undead Viking. If you have watched my show, or whatever you want to call this, for a while, you may have heard me tell stories of the glory years of my formative board game experience when I was in my late teens and early 20s. I played a lot of really epically long games of things like Axis and Allies, or Supremacy, or Diplomacy. Games that have lots of people playing, that took a long time to play. And they maybe not had the most complex rules that ever existed, but they definitely had just a continuation of the game. I mean, it just took a long time to figure out who won those games, and I liked those games. I mean, I miss it in a way because of the fact that I don't have 8-9 hours to play them. And the thing is that it seems like a product of a bygone era, if you will. Now, I realize that there are lots of people that play war games, and there are lots of people that play those mammoth, long, epic things, and I admire that. I admire the tenacity of it. I admire the interest, and I admire just the free time that those people have. But it's one of those things where I would play a lot more of those if I could find ones that didn't have such a steep learning curve to get into the game, and also just one of those that had a friendly entry. So I could appeal to my group to play the game, and then have a thing where we would set up. We're going to play this game on a Saturday afternoon. We're going to start at 10 a.m. We're going to finish at 6, and everybody is looking forward to it and having fun with it. And so I found a few games like that, but I'm always on the lookout for games that are of that genre, and I want to find more. And when the creator of this one, Swords and Sails, contacted me to tell me about their game, I was immediately hooked, because I was exactly that type of game, that epically long game and I shouldn't say it's long, because you definitely can play a shortened version of this game, but a game full of the game beyond the game, as far as the negotiation, the conversation, the diplomacy that involves between two different players, and not just it isn't a mechanism, so to speak, of the board where roll this dice and see if you work out a truce. No, I mean, it's you and this person trying to discuss, look, it's I will help you take out France, but you definitely got to get your fleets over here to help me with Russia and things like that, and so this was a game that I knew that if I could get it to the table, I knew if I could get people interested, I would have wonderfully long, engrossing, I guess, times with it, if you will. I mean, but just sessions. I like the word session to describe the gameplay of this one. So, as I said, it doesn't have a horrendously difficult rules set. I mean, there's a lot of math involved, just as far as the income and totaling up troop strength and things like that. But I mean, the game itself has it uses dice for combat, and it has a hidden army movement thing that I really like. Some espionage and stuff like that. But let me show you how all that stuff works, and then we'll come back here and I'll talk more about Swords and Sails. Alright, awesome. Alright, this is the rather large game map for Swords and Sails. Now, this game, as I said, can be played by quite a few people. You might notice that there are a lot of areas that are colored. Obviously, these are the neutral areas that can be taken over by the players. But you can see, obviously, Great Britain and France, and here's the northern Norway, Sweden, and so forth. These different places can be each run by a player in the attempts to win the game and control Europe during this time of history. Now, as I said, these are all historical groups, and the book the rule book that I have actually has here's the Holy Roman Empire, and it kind of tells a little bit about it, or the Fatimid Caliphate, so there's actual this is a historical game. Of course, you're rewriting history, and you're going to change things up as well. So I have only set up 2 of the factions. You can play this with 2 players. I did play a game where everybody was involved and all of the different factions were being controlled by somebody, and that was a lot of fun. But I have played it 2 players as well, and that was also a lot of fun. When you play the game, you can play to like a certain point total, like whoever can get to the victory point total that first will win. Also, you can play a timed game, like a certain number of years, and then whoever has the like highest income, which basically will say who has the most territory, the most cities, will win the game at that point. This is a game where you can have alliances. Obviously, if we're just playing a 2-player game, you're not going to have alliances, but you can have an alliance, and you do have to set up that alliance well before declaring victory. I mean, like if like you were going to say, oh, we're now allied together, so we're going to win, that won't work. You have to do it years ahead in advance, so the other players can have a chance to catch up or take you down or what have you. But negotiation and conversation and just working with players to take out other players to serve your own needs is a very important aspect of this game, and that's why I called it a throwback game. This is definitely something that appeals to the younger me, the me that was 18 and 20 and so forth, and I could play these games on a more regular basis. But all right, so the game itself is relatively simple and easy to learn. There are there's some mathiness to it as far as the combats go and things like that. But for the most part, the game, as I said, it just will progress very simply. This little game board here, and it can be kind of tough to see some of the little boxes and also some of the tokens around here. And you might not be able to see this, but like if you're playing a short game, it's like 3 years. So it even says like short game end here, medium game end, and like if you're playing the full campaign game, you're going to go from 1000 AD to 1015 AD. But each turn of the game, you'll just move through the seasons and then increase the years. And then at the beginning of the game, each faction will have their tokens placed in their starting spots to denote their city income, their harvest income, and also their score. And so, like I said, you can be playing, and like you can see that these scores here with the stars on them, that's like the total number of points that if you can reach that, you'd win. Or you can, like I say, play a timed game. And you can see down here, it's like scoring is 1 per territory, 1 per minor city, 3 per major city, 10 per declared ally, and 10 per enemy capital captured. So, this is fluctuating constantly. As you take over more territory, you will increase your harvest income. You get 10 harvest income per territory you control, and so that's why they can get pretty high. You can notice how there's like you'd have like something in the hundreds and over here, so you could show that if like you ever got that high as far as the number of territories you controlled. And then the city income is based off of, for every normal city or port city you gain 10, and then for every capital city you gain 30. And then those just adjust as you gain and lose those countries, and you just move those as the game progresses. You'll notice that also there are these little cubes that have these numbers on them. Those denote the armies, and that would be army number 4 for the Byzantine Empire. And like there are also fleets that have numbers on them, and that obviously are the fleets for that particular faction. Each player will get these cards basically, and these will have the armies and so forth that you will control. The Byzantine army, they only start with 4 armies. They don't start with the 5th army just yet, but you can create that at a later time to help you out and have that extra army rolling around on the board. You are going to then, like on the back side of this, well, first of all, in the beginning, it tells you where they start. So it starts in Thrace, and then it tells you the units. And so like it has a knight, has a heavy cavalry, has a light cavalry, 3 heavy infantry, a light infantry, and 2 peasants. And so on the back, you'll see that it has all those stats. And so, like, I don't have the, you use dry erase marker on these, and you would just write down how many of each of these you have. It tells you exactly how much it costs if you're going to recruit more. It tells you, like, their, like, abilities as far as when they're attacking. You know, what they have to, if, you know, what they have to roll to destroy an opponent, their morale, how much it costs per maintenance. And so as your army increases or decreases in size, you will, you know, adjust the total size, the total morale, and the total maintenance. The total morale is very important because the total morale of your army at any given moment is how much influence they have at forcing the other player to rout that other army, and then, you know, keep themselves from being routed. And obviously the maintenance is there because at every turn you're going to be paying the cost to keep your armies going, and hopefully that you keep that cost in check, so you're, you know, the money that you make isn't ever less than that, because you don't want to obviously lose your army. Now down here you'll notice that it has orders, you know, move, attack, defend, load, unload. Now, those obviously are going to be what your, like, armies will do in any particular turn. You know, are they going to move? Are they going to attack? You know, so pretty standard. And then you would, like, if you're going to move to an area, you would say move and, you know, to, like, the spot. Now, if you believe that there's, like, if you're moving into a neutral area, you know, maybe you're attacking that to take it over. So you'd show that down there. And this is done in secret, obviously. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put those down after you write down your orders. And theoretically, if you have more than 2 players, you're going to have negotiations and discussions with everybody. It's like, okay, will you help me out here? You know, I'm gonna go here to take this. I expect you not to stop me. That sort of thing. And so you have that negotiation aspect of the game as well. The game, this one, came with a timer, so if you don't want the negotiation aspect to take too long, you can say, okay, negotiations begin. Now, obviously, you can have this, people can get up from the table, go have a quick conversation, you can pass notes to discuss these things, all those sorts of things. And this is a 3-minute timer. Now, 3 minutes sounds like it's a long time, and you can see this moving slow, but when you're, like, up against it, and you're worried about somebody taking you out, 3 minutes is rarely enough time to be able to convince other players not to destroy you. So when the game turn flows pretty quickly, and you do get to this, and like I said, this is a really high-end prototype that I was sent. The Sword in the Sails is pretty amazing. The designer, the creator, went to a lot of effort to make this, and I can only assume when it is published it's going to look even better. But so, like, you have, like, you know, the Holy Roman Empire. Like, it just kind of tells you, and it gives you this straightforward. It also, if it's your first game, it gives you suggestions as far as what you should do on your first turn, like what actions you should have. So, like, it's saying that your first army in Saxony should move to and attack and siege Frisia, and so it's suggesting for, you know, army number 1 should move to Frisia to attack and siege Frisia, to take that over, and, you know, and so you can add that to your empire, and so on and so forth. And so, like, and then it says the fleet should just defend, no movement, and just stays there. And so then it actually, you know, goes through the whole process. Now, you don't have to follow that, obviously, when you play it, but, you know, you definitely can take the suggestion. And the same thing, and this might be a little tougher to read for the Byzantium Empire, but same kind of information, same suggestions, and what have you. Now, on the back, and then it shows, you know, like, the different steps of each turn. And on the back of these, it'll actually, like, you know, give you a quick reference sheet, like the combat tables. A knight attacking, a knight defending. You have to roll a 6 or less on 2 dice to defeat the knight. A 9 or less for heavy cavalry, a 7 or less for light cavalry, 7 or less for heavy infantry, 9 or less for light infantry, and 11 or less to defeat a peasant. So, you know, and some of those make sense. Now, the one I was like, what, really? You know, it's like, you know, you would think, you know, 9 or less heavy cavalry. I mean, you would think that light cavalry would be easier to destroy, but actually, that I guess that what that represents is that light cavalry is very mobile and able to, like, you use ranged weapons and things like that, and that's why the knights aren't as effective against those. So, you'll also notice that there are the fleets. You know, you have warships, you have raiders, and you have transports that are represented by warships, WS, raiders, WRD, and transports, TR. Ships are obviously going to be used to carry things. Transports can carry 5, raiders 3, and warships 2. And so like that's when the load and unload action for your armies can have, like, you know, going. So they load, the ship moves, and they unload and things like that. Pretty straightforward if you played any kind of a war game or anything like that that has that going on. So here are the phases. So you can see. So the collect income, pay maintenance. Just like you said, you look at this board, you collect your income, and you have coins. Like here's these little box of coins. I'm not going to dig them all out, but you're going to collect your income and then pay your maintenance. Now, actually, you can kind of split that up by just realizing what your maintenance is, total it all up, figure what your income is, and then just take that amount, so you don't have to actually go through the process of taking the coins, then handing them back. But performing espionage. Now, performing espionage is a very important aspect. You can do counter espionage, which costs you 30 gold, and you can do espionage, which costs 30 gold. And each person, it will decide in turn, in order. There's an order for each kingdom, and I don't remember the exact order for each one. It's listed in the rule books, but each person will decide if they're going to do espionage or counter espionage. And the big thing is, and you can do your counter espionage will only work once. So if more than one person tries to use espionage on you, you have to pick which one you're going to. But what happens with espionage is that you have to roll 2 dice. And if you can, and notice that, like, on the first turn, there would be no reason to have espionage at all, due to the fact that everybody knows what the starting armies are. But espionage is done to try to figure out what is included in each army that each person has. Because after the first turn, you're going to be building more troops, and you're going to be placing them in your armies. So when you do the espionage, if somebody has picked counter espionage and they are using the counter espionage against you, then you add 3 to that. What you're going to do is you're going to roll 2 dice, and if counter espionage is used, you're going to, like, hopefully get you have to add 3 to the roll, and if you get 8 or less, it's successful. And the player controlling you're going to pick one person's army or fleet, has to reveal the units on the card to the spying player. And so let's say, like, the Holy Roman Empire wanted to know what was on the other side of this, the army 1. And so they take 2 dice and they roll, and they get a 6. The Holy Roman side is 6. And so if they didn't use counter espionage, they'd succeed. If they did, they'd fail, because that would be +3 of 9. And so then they'd be able to look at the other side of this, and then be able to see, what they've written down for each one of these particular units. And so they know how powerful that army is, and how many units and what kind of units are in that army. And and then obviously they could share that with other players if they wanted to, but they don't have to. But they can't take it and hand it to everybody. They only get to look at it, and then obviously they could say, oh, well, he's got 4 knights, he's got 2 heavy infantry, and stuff like that. And then you have to decide whether or not you believe what that person is telling you. So after you've done that, you will then do the diplomacy, which is the same thing as I said. You turn this thing over and you start counting up the time, and then everybody writes their orders. And then after they're get done writing down all their orders, they then will process those orders and start moving their armies about the board. And then you will, after that is done, then you will resolve all battles. Players that attack each other will face off, and I'll show you combat here in just a second. If it is against a neutral territory, you have to do a siege combat to capture the neutral territory. And then if you win or lose locations, you will then adjust the points and the income on the chart over there. So like I said, I'm going to show battles here in just a second, just a quick little battle, show you how it works. But Then after you've resolved all the battles, then you get to build new units. So any gold you have, you can use to buy more armies, and then you would, buy more units. And then you just place those, after you adjust them, you place them on the back of the army sheets that you have. And you can use it to buy fleets as well. When you buy fleets, though, they have to be placed in. They can be added to an existing fleet, or if you create a new fleet, you put it on. But they have to show up by a port city that you control, that is by the water, obviously. And then, if you want to, you can build cities. Notice the dots and the crosses are cities already, and they are located. They can't ever be destroyed or anything like that. But you do have the option of building new cities, and then the cities are represented in this case, by these little guys. And so, like, if you built a city, in Peshens, Pechenegs, you would just put that like that, and then later on, if you wanted, you can upgrade them to a capital city, and then those look like this. I just dropped that, of course, and then you just upgrade it. You can't build a capital city to begin with. You have to build the normal city and then upgrade it. Obviously, if you build a city, that does increase your income as well. So after everybody's built your cities, then you going to go ahead and advance the turn track, and then go on this particular board, and adjust that as you adjust this to summer, and then autumn and winter, and then increase the years as well, and you just continue on until you reach that phase that the game is over. And then so it is noted that in summer, the new agricultural income is set at that point. So that is when your harvest income does get altered, depending on the different spots that you've taken over and what have you. So there you go. I mean, and that's a real overview, like a high-end overview of the game. There's a lot more to it, obviously, because you're going to be conversing and talking and discussing and trying to figure out exactly who at the table is your friend and who isn't, and so on and so forth. And so that is, of course, the difficult aspect. And I did think it was kind of neat that and I think this is what they're sort of, these diplomat cards are obviously also dry erase. And so you could write your note on the back of these and then hand it to somebody and say, and then they could write back a note, whatever you say, should we gang up and take out, the caliphate, and then they'd say, no, they're my friends, and I'm going to tell them that you want to take them out, and oh no! So I did like how that little aspect of the game came forward. So, alright, so I said I'd show you how the combat worked, and I'm just going to kind of grab some units here. And the units that these are just these little poker chips. Like I said, this is a very high-end prototype, and I had a lot of fun playing with this. So I'm just going to, and this is not going to be super indicative of what normally you're going to have in combat, because you have the ability to have several different types of units in your group, but the units, having them match up as far as their power and ability, that's where the whole point of having the secret armies and stuff like that is really important, because of the fact that you want to try to hide what type of things you have. So let's say, I'm just going to grab these, so you have a knight and 2 light cavalry and a heavy infantry, so and a light infantry. So that would be I'm going to have this for the Holy Roman Empire. So then, and you can see on there, it's that's a light infantry, and that's heavy infantry, and so on and so forth, like so, right? And then, let me pick some out here. I just grab these kind of at random here. And that'll be so the Byzantines aren't going to have, let me see if I can find I got a lot of heavy infantry, but not a lot of knights. I got a heavy cavalry, though. That'll work. So, and I apologize. So, and then this is the opponent. So they've attacked, they've revealed, and so now what happens is, and there is a quick combat version. rules, and I'm not going to show you those. I'm going to show you this is like the more tactical type of combat, and because I like this better. So I'm just going to turn this over so I have a good spot to put this on. And so depending on the attacker, what the attacker does is that they will first take one of their units and they will, place that on the board. So let's take their knight. They have a knight, and you just place it like so. Now the defender will look through their units and they will try to find one that matches up well. And as I said before, light cavalry seems to match up pretty well. And so they go like this, and they match it up on the other side. And then the defender picks another one of their units. Let's say they take this heavy cavalry, and they put it to the side of it, like so. Now you will, like the other player, will then look through their guys and say, okay, we have a cavalry, what's good against them? Let's put some heavy infantry down, and so forth. And then this is, and I apologize if it's a little tough to tell, what these different units are, but then this is the process that kind of goes through. And so then now we got to pick another one. So let's put one of our light cavalry down, and then so we go back and forth like so. And so as this keeps going, and you don't have to keep it up going in a line, you can put on either side, so forth like this. And eventually one person is going to run out of units. One person's going to have more than the other. And so, when that happens, then and then now yellow has no more units, and so purple then can place units behind other units, like so. So to show that they are backing up like in ranks. And then you just go through the process of each person rolling the dice for each one of the little skirmishes involved. And then you look at the chart that I showed you earlier to see what the effect is. Now all combat is considered to be simultaneous, and so what you will do is you will then go to the first one, and so that is a light infantry versus a light infantry. And let me zoom in. I don't normally zoom in on these things, but let me just zoom in here real quick. Maybe give you an idea of what you can see here. And this is probably not the best thing in the world, so as far as being able to see those little tiny figures, but it does work really well when you're playing it in person. But so here we go. So we have a light infantry versus light infantry. So we'll look, and some of them are different. As far as the English. I'm sorry, you can't see that. The English light infantry is slightly different. Kiev peasants are slightly different, and the northern kingdoms, their heavy infantry is slightly different than normal. But if we look at this, we'll see that light infantry attacks. Let's see, light infantry defends, and so we have light infantry defends against light infantry 7. So, so what is going to happen is that if I can roll, if the attacker can roll underneath 7 for the attack, then it'll be successful. And so we'll just kind of roll this real quick, and I rolled an 8. So that attack wasn't successful, and then the other person then rolls, and they rolled a 6, and so they'd be successful. And so then that would remove that particular unit. And you're going to do that for each one of those that goes down the line, and just do the attacks back and forth. Now, if the one in front of it goes away, then obviously then the secondary slides in front like that. Now, it's important to mark down as far as the casualties, because that's really important, because after you get done with your first string of combat, that is when you check morale. And so you total up, remember I told you about that giant morale total? You total up the morale of the army, and you compare them one to one each other. And so if you have basically whoever's got the most morale, so say one person has 40 morale left and the other person has 20 morale left, and so they have 2 to 1. So you check in the 2 to 1, and you would see that it's 4 or less means a rout. But notice also morale modifiers to the total are If you're defending your own territory, +1. You're defending your capital, +5. +1 per enemy unit killed, +2 per enemy knight killed, -1 per unit killed, -2 per knight killed. And that's why you keep track of the casualties. But so if it's, let's just say after all that, it is 2-1. So the person that is like, would be like, you know, in trouble, let's say it's the Holy Roman Emperor, you roll the dice. And I did. I actually got a 3, and so that is a rout. And so then that is when they're going to retreat. So the weird thing is that like obviously, like if you have any cavalry units, they can't get attacked as they retreat. But when the infantry units turn around, the opponent gets one last shot at them to see if they can take them out as they leave the battlefield. And if you retreat, you have to go back to a territory that is friendly to you. If you can't, your army is lost anyway. So combat for ships works pretty much exactly the same. It's just there's one other difference, is that they have the secondary number, and that is a capture. So you can actually, because you can actually capture somebody else's ships during a combat. And so like when a warship attacks another warship, a 7 or less would destroy it, but if they roll a 2, they would capture it. And with a raider, a 9 or less would destroy it, but a 3 or less would capture. And so a raider attacks a warship, they can't ever capture it, but they could capture another raider. You can't capture a transport that is loaded with troops, but you can destroy it. But obviously, the transport that is not does not have any troops can be captured. And so, obviously, if you lose a transport that has units on it, those units would drown and they would die. So you do that for every single one of the combats, and you then will go on after that, and that's when you build your new units. As I said, you build new cities, and then you go on to the next turn, and you start it up all over again, and you figure out where you're at, what you need to do. Do you need to lick your wounds? Do you continue attacking? You move your armies around, and just have at it. And this is one of those epically long games that is, but is, like I said, it's a throwback. It's something that I really enjoy. I wish more games like this were in existence, and I admire the ambition behind Swords and Sails. But let me tell you more about that in my conclusion. Oh, I forgot one other last thing. I forgot to tell you about the siege battles. So I'll just show you the rules really quick. So siege battles, like basically, lots of games I played, you just move your neutral troops into an uncontrolled territory. They just take it over automatically. But not so, because in this game it represents like the actual people and like taking over the cities and what have you in taking that spot. So siege battles, so you have 1d6 unit losses. For each minor city, you add 1d6. For each major city, add 3d6. If it's Kievan Rus or England territory, +3. North Sea Empire territory, +5. Player capital territory, +10. Byzantine capital territory, +20. And so you roll all of that. And then that's your casualty points. And then you have to remove units of the army depending upon their value. So like, let's say you roll a total of 22. Well, you're going to have to come up with 22 total points or more, because you can't make change, obviously, with your army, to make up the things. So like, you could say I'm going to lose, with 22, you could say I'm going to lose 3 light cavalry, which would be 12, and then I'm going to lose, I can't add right now, but 2 heavy infantry, which would be 6 more, would be 18, and then 2 light one light infantry, which would take us 20, and then 2 peasants would be 2. So that'd be 22 total, and you'd lose those, but then you would take control of the territory. Now notice it says half of casualty points around a town can be removed at 15 gold per 1 point. So with that rolling of 22, if I wanted to get rid of 11 of those casualty points, I could do so. But it would cost me 11 times 15 would be 165 if my multiplication is correct. So you pay that gold, and then you wouldn't have to lose those units because you're just using your gold to like probably bribe the people and what have you into not being upset about you taking over the area. So so there you go. So that's how you take over a neutral territory. So Okay, well, so now, let me tell you more about Swords and Sails and what I think of it. Alright, thanks for learning more about Swords and Sails. So I hope you have a pretty good idea of how to play the game. I apologize I couldn't show you, like, the whole epicness of the board. I mean, it definitely is one of those things where, you know, it doesn't have, like, the little miniatures or whatever that Axis and Allies had or anything like that. But when you have all of the different little armies and everything like that all over the board and the fleets and everything like that, it really is just a really fun, cool game to look at. And, you know, and it definitely, like, because of the realistic map and everything like that, I think it adds a lot to, like, that historical buff that's in me. Now, obviously, there's lots of things about this game that you can draw comparisons to. You know, you can, like, Game of Thrones, the board game, or, like I mentioned, Diplomacy, you know, before. And I kind of, in a weird way, it's kind of a combination of, you know, both Diplomacy and, oh man, I can't remember the name of the game now, but I think it was called Conquest of Europe or something like that. It was like a medieval board game, but that was a lot more dice based. But it kind of reminded me of that game, a game that I used to have that I used to play a lot of. But I mean, this one is definitely more in depth. It just than those games that I'm mentioning. You know that. You know, and I would say that Game of Thrones has the same kind of negotiation and the same kind of value, but because of the fact that, like, you have to put those tokens on and everything like that to kind of show off what you're doing, I don't get the same thing as far as, like, I always loved playing Diplomacy with my friends. The problem was that game lasted forever, and it also was one of those things where if, like, you had 2 or 3 people that just decided we're gonna wipe the map of everybody else before we turn on each other, they could do that. And you know, and that was obviously like one of those things that you had to learn better negotiation, what have you. But I always hated the fact that I didn't have dice. You know, just give me a chance at least. You know, even if it's like a 1 in 100, give me the chance. Give me the dice. Let me see if I can roll that 0-1 to pull off the win. And so, you know, I liked. I like the aspect of the hidden orders. I mean, some of my favorite moments of my young board gaming life involved, you know, the hidden order aspect of, like, you know, oh no, I'm not gonna stab you in the back here, buddy. You know, just and I look back on that with fondness, and because of the and I think that's, you know, one of the reasons why I'm really good at negotiation games now is I had that beginning, if you will. Now, other than that, I mean, the game is just solid. I mean, it's exactly what I would expect out of this game. You know, it's like, as I said, there's some math involved. You know, like, you know, and I'm not the biggest math whiz as it is. You probably noticed that in my videos, but so I keep a notepad next to me, so I just constantly am, like, writing down the different addition and subtraction that I need to keep track of it. But that's what that little board is for too, as far as to keep constant track of like, you know, where your income is and you know, like, where you're at as far as the game is concerned. But I mean, this is definitely a game that's going to appeal to a certain type of gamer, and you're going to have that same love of this type of game that I do. I don't see somebody just, like, you know, stepping into the hobby and pulling this down and saying, maybe I should try this out. But I do see people that, like, you know, played Diplomacy when they're younger and wanted to try this one out. Maybe you're, like, even an old Axis and Allies fan, things like that. I mean, it is a war game, it is a negotiation game, but it isn't, you know, it isn't like a war game, so to speak, because lots of war games are very scenario driven. It's like, well, this is where you are, this is where you are, and you need to get there. But this one doesn't have that script for you. Yes, it has a historical basis, but the whole idea behind this game is rewriting that history. And, like, saying, what if the Holy Roman Empire did this? What if the North Sea empires gained a foothold in France? You know, and things like that, where you can just kind of say, and after the game is done, you can kind of look at it and say, that's really neat. You know, I don't know if that would have happened in real life, but I mean, maybe it could have. And I like that aspect of the game. And I like the fact that it tells me a story as I'm playing the game, and I can kind of see that history being rewritten as I go through the motions of the game. And this is definitely one of those games that we get done, and it's an exhaustion that we feel when the game is over. It's a good exhaustion. I mean, it's a very pleasant, self-satisfying exhaustion, and I think that's a bonus to the game. I think I'm paying it a high compliment in my opinion. So, you know what? If you're a fan of historical games, historical themed games, I think you're going to really like this. If you are a person that looks back at those days of Axis and Allies and supremacy and diplomacy with fondness, I think this is something you're going to enjoy. And if you're just somebody that's looking for you know, a low weight like lots of player type war game, I think you're definitely going to want to look at this one as well. So, there you go. That is Swords and Sails. I've had a heck of a lot of fun playing it. If you have any questions about the game, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those to the best of my ability. As always, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And until next time, this is me, the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye.